Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Kelly. I'm Chief Executive of Manufacturing Northern Ireland. You're all very welcome along to this webinar this afternoon. I'm going to hand over in a second to Stephen Crawford, who's Sales Director of West Group, who'll take us through the content of this afternoon. I think we've all experiencing in terms of how we work. Lots of us are now having to work from home, and with that comes specific risks. And you just need to look at the media and indeed just our own family lives to know that people see that as an opportunity to perhaps take an opportunity to defraud us, to engage in criminal activity. And that's a bad enough outcome and a bad enough scenario. But on many occasions, manufacturers, particularly now as they become much more connected in terms of their machinery, much more connected in terms of their systems, are leaving themselves absolutely exposed to potential attack from people that have motives that are not necessarily positive. You just need to look at the papers on the island of Ireland in this last short period in time and see that even the health services are becoming victims of really difficult circumstances caused by people who don't have decent intent. And it is incumbent on us all, I think, to ensure that the security of our businesses is treated in the same way as our security of supply. We need to ensure that our systems, processes, procedures, and people really understand the risks that are there and to take whatever action we can in order to protect our business and protect the people that work for us. So today is an opportunity to learn a bit more about that. And to learn ways in which we can protect ourselves and to give you the best insight that we can through Stephen and colleagues on the call. We know that many manufacturers have actually been victims of cyber attack. We know there are many manufacturers that have lost their systems, lost their control of their internal resources, as well as people losing lots of money. So this is an issue that's becoming increasingly relevant to our sector. As we digitize what we do, it's critically important that we take all actions we can to protect ourselves. So hopefully today, both in terms of the live webinar that we're hosting and indeed the recording that we're sharing with others after the event, will give you some insight into the risks that are there, but particularly the sorts of actions that you should be taking as an organization to protect yourselves and the people that depend upon you. So I'll hand over now to Stephen Crawford, who will kick off the webinar for us this afternoon. Can I just say finally that if you have any questions, do put them into the Q&A. Connor, my colleague, will be hosting the Q&A session after the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and welcome everyone to our first Just Ask webinar. And again, thank you for allowing us to be part of Manufacturing NI. Just a few Zoom housekeeping rules. You've probably heard them all before. Everybody will be on mute. As Stephen says, there's an option to ask questions through the chat function. If we don't get to all the questions, we definitely will follow up. If any of your questions are sensitive and you're a little bit unsure, I'll be putting them into the chat function. Again, we'll have some contact details shared with you that you can pick up with us directly after this. We're also recording the event today, so it will be there for future use. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sandra Quinn, and later on during the session, we will be joined by Sam Kincaid from the PSNI. And I know Sandra and I are really looking forward to Sam's session again, so I hope you all are as well. Today, I'm going to take you through just a little bit about outsource. We'll keep that bit very brief. I'll have a quick chat with Sandra about her role and how she really brings cybersecurity to life for her customers. Then we're going to look at a specific case study for one of our largest probably manufacturing firms in Northern Ireland. And then we'll bring in Sam, and Sam will share with you a lot of the detail that he's seeing on a daily basis. So a little bit about outsource, and again, I will keep this brief. We're a managed service and security provider. We have locations across the UK and Ireland with a global customer base. Our message is really quite simple. Trust us to take care of your technology to allow you the time to look after your business. We see ourselves as an innovative technology business, but we also see ourselves as a people business. We want to talk to you to understand your business needs so that we can propose the right solution to help your business. In essence, we really want to make your life better. We're also a very future-focused company, and over the past 18 to 24 months, we have spent a lot of time and a lot of money, up to about £1 million, working with Dell EMC to design and deploy OSG Cloud, which is a performance-led cloud platform. But that's for another day. Today, we're going to talk about cybersecurity. I don't want to steal Sam's thunder for later on, but I do want to share some headline numbers with you that I really do think will set the scene for today. So if you look at the first number, 1.6 million was lost in last year due to fraud from cybercrime. And again, that's the reported number. I think it's very important to highlight the fact that that is the reported number, because again, that number could be way north of that. So if you look at the average loss as 20K per incident, I think one of the most frightening stats to date is 5 months into the year, we're already at 87% of that number from last year. So whenever you look, we're not even in the H2 yet, but the number has just been getting bigger month on month. With the 14 ransomware reports involving local organisations since the start of the year, that's 3 per month. And whenever you look at 3 per month, the £20,000 per incident, you can see all of a sudden how this begins to ramp up. Sandra lives and breathes this every day with her customers, and I think it's very important for you guys to understand how Sandra makes this real. So Sandra, I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and if you don't mind. So I suppose first of all, so everybody gets a little bit of understanding of you, how long have you worked in IT? And what would you say has been the biggest change during this time?
Afternoon, everybody. I've been in IT for 20 plus years. 7 of them spent here with outsource. Currently, I work in the security department as one of their specialists. And Stephen, in relation to the question, I'd say the biggest change has been in relation to cybersecurity and ultimately the protection of data. So I think it's actually broken down into like 3 different parts. So the amount of data, digital data, has grown. So every business has that bit more data. But on the flip side of that, the cyber criminals have got more sophisticated. And then it's wrapped around with legislation. So them 3 things is really, really tying business up in knots as to what their responsibility is to the customers, to their data, and even their own employees. So yeah, I would say cybersecurity and data protection.
Okay, so you've mentioned data, you've mentioned cyber criminals, you've mentioned legislation, but how do you relate all that as to what is happening with your actual customers?
I think it all has to be, again, it's about their data. And I think when you make it very real for them as to data is their biggest asset, that's what makes it real for them. So I would talk about things like backups. So ultimately, if you did have a cyber threat, at least you can recover from it. So almost all, you have a recovery point. But I think it's no longer okay just to have a recovery point. You need to verify it, and you need to know how far you can go back. And does that match your business needs and your customers' needs in relation to legislation for your PPI or for your PII, which is your personal identification information that you have. So yeah, it's all got to do with that, and it's also got to do with, do you know what your users have in access in relation to your business remotely, internally? Have they maybe got more access than they need? They're the kind of things that make it real for people and businesses to try and narrow down the attempts of cyber criminals getting into the business. Okay,
a lot of the conversations you will have now, you'll have with IT directors, IT managers, even now more probably into the FDs and the CEOs. But how do you filter that down to the end user to make cybersecurity real for them?
You hit it on the head there. You have to make it real for the users. You have to have those webinars. You have to have those face-to-face meetings. But by making it real for them is around things like their passwords. You know, rather than being fearful of your password and maybe constantly forgetting it, have a passphrase instead, you know, and have something like, I love summer holidays, but you're substituting it in with zeros and @ symbols. That's a much better password than password 123. Yeah. So, you know, it's just about educating them. I think it's also very, very important about culture. Culture, that security culture has to be instilled from the managers right down. The managers in a business need to show how security is going to be implemented in the business and go by the standards as well. So culture is big. Culture is big. I think once you've nailed that, you're a long way to helping your users understand their role in security.
Okay. Well, hopefully that frames just a little bit about you and your role, you know, for our audience here today. You mentioned the word education, and I know education comes into play in the case study we're going to talk about. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, we're missing one of our key people from the room today, and you definitely would have added a lot of value in person. Maybe you can explain why Fergal can't be with us and how you're going to run the next session.
Yes, so unfortunately, Fergal from Main Surface Finishing should have been with us today, but due to unforeseen circumstances, he couldn't join us today. But Fergal was very adamant that he had a message, you know, to get across. So I travelled to see him yesterday, and we went through the questions, and he felt that they had a story to tell, and if he could save somebody else from going through the torture that he has gone through personally and in his business and at the senior management level, that he would love to share it with us. So I guess we have to apologise that maybe this might sound a bit scripted, but what we didn't want was our point of view on it. We wanted Fergal's point of view on it as a financial controller, how he dealt with it, and the obstacles that he had to overcome in order to get through the scenario. So it is probably a bit of Stephen's going to ask me the questions. I'm going to be Fergal. Not sure Fergal wears dresses, mind you, but we go with it for today. So if we have sort of like a bit of a question and answer, I'll try and get it across the way Fergal would do.
Perfect. And I know we will be sending Fergal recording as well, but now I do have this mental image of this picture in my head of Fergal. So, but look, we will crack on. We do apologise for taking the script a bit, but as I say, it's an important message to get across.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will call you Sandra for this because I couldn't call you Fergal. So in November 2020, there was an unfortunate incident that happened with Main Surface Finishing. So how were you first alerted to the issue?
One of our customers rang in to confirm with me that we had changed our bank details. I told them that we hadn't, to which they informed me they received an email from our accounts department saying that we changed our bank details, and the name that was mentioned on the email to ring, they didn't recognise the name, so they rang through to me. They forwarded on the email thread that they had received supposedly from us. I contacted our internal accounts team to ring around some other customers to see if they had received anything. Another customer had received the same kind of email thread, but again, it wasn't sent from us. They also rang to confirm the bank details had changed, except the number they rang was on the email and got through to Jeffrey, who confirmed that the bank details for Main Surface Finishing had indeed changed. That customer transferred £50,000 to the new bank account, which was supposedly our new bank account, but it was actually the cyber criminals' bank account.
So there was an actual number.
Yeah.
There's an actual person at the end of the phone.
Called Jeffrey.
And whenever they called to set up this new banking, an actual person answered.
Yes.
Again.
So they got the confirmation.
So they got the verbal confirmation from the business. Okay. So what was the first thing that Fergal done?
The first thing I done was rang the bank to see where the payment had gone, liaised with customers involved, updated my internal senior management. At the same time, we rang our IT provider to get the system shut down and help us to assess the extent of the damage. We rang all our customers to say our bank details had not changed. This was the start of a real living nightmare for me.
So you were with Fergal yesterday, probably as he was recalling a lot of this stuff. You know, how do you think he felt yesterday whenever he was going back through it?
You can feel it, that he was reliving it again yesterday, because £50,000 is not a small amount of money. And it's COVID. COVID was last year, and this was how easy it was.
Okay. So what was his biggest fear initially?
Well, this is all over this part's actually all over the shop, but you can actually maybe get a sense of what he was feeling. So his fear was that the cyber criminal had still access that £50,000 had been paid. What other customers of Main were contacted, fear that we were caught, fear of the loss of money. What else were they doing in the business with their other customers? What was the extent of the damage? Was the money gone? There was literally so much going through my head. Was the cause of it? What was the cause of the attack? Was it our IT systems to blame? Was our internal systems to blame? Was it because we recently changed personnel in the finance department? 50k is a significant amount. How was I going to tell Eugene Dixon, the managing director of Main Surface Finishing, that I had lost him £50,000? November was the height of COVID, and losing £50,000 was certainly not on the radar. With people working from home and people coming back into the office, were our systems to blame because we were a bit more relaxed and maybe so many people moving around?
So you do get the real sense of ownership straight away from Fergal, but all these thoughts come through his head, you know, all the what ifs, is it still there? Is there more money at risk? Blame, everything. Yeah. Okay, so, but at that point in time, Main had several layers of protection in place. Yeah. So what happened?
So yes, several layers of protection in place, but in this case, it was the human element that was a big factor. We all try our best at Main to be careful on what we click on, but with some of the emails, they're really hard to spot and look so genuine. Also, it's about other businesses we interact with and what procedures they have in place for security. The final stage in our attack was the email that was sent to our customer saying we had changed our bank account number, also had the name Jeffrey Parks and a mobile number to ring and confirm the bank details. Our customer rang the mobile number on the email, and lo and behold, Jeffrey answered, confirming the new bank details, and our customer just paid the £50,000 into the cyber criminals account. That's scary.
Yeah, and I think and we'll show a little video later that a lot of it's behind the scenes, but I think this shows as well how upfront and brazen some of these cyber criminals are to present the number, to present themselves,
to
answer it as Jeffrey. Okay, so £50,000 just poof, gone.
And that's as simple as that. Except it really could have been so much worse. If the customer hadn't have contacted us to confirm the bank details, we may not have picked it up so quick. The same customer that paid the £50,000 were due to make another payment a few days later of £600,000. This is what I count my blessings for. This story has a happy ending for all involved. I would like to say that I flew to the cyber criminals location and held them up by the scruff of the neck and got my £50,000 back. But in this case, the bank contacted me 3 weeks later to say that the £50,000 was stocked in a foreign bank as suspicious. So 3 weeks later, the £50,000 was returned. This all ended well. However, it was extremely tough at the time.
Yeah. And I think this was written through a South African or an African bank somewhere. Yeah. Okay.
Just pure luck. Pure luck. That's how he got his money back.
Okay. So just summarise actually what did happen then for us, Sandra.
So what seems to be happening, there was a lot of coincidence with this threat. We had just changed our personnel in the accounts department, and our customer knew this was happening. So when they seen a different name to contact, they didn't pass much remarks. It was also coming to month end, so email contact would be made with our customers to get balances settled. The person on the email answered the phone. So again, all this was confirming exactly what was meant to happen. So it looks like it was a result of a phishing email that was clicked and instigated the threat. The user had no idea or memory of clicking anything that was suspicious. They seemed to gain access to through the email on the user's device after the user entered the username and password through the phishing email.
And again, I think it's just right at this time we say, this wasn't just a bit happening with Main. This activity would have been ongoing throughout the industry, a lot of different organisations, but Main just fell foul at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what advice did Fergal have? I know he was keen to share his advice with other businesses.
Yeah, well, Fergal's advice was, of course, the normal, increase your procedures and all the internal things. But actually, one thing that he highlighted was the interaction with third parties. So he goes, you can add more layers of security to the system. However, you need to keep great communication with your third parties and customers that interact with your business. The biggest advice for other customers is ensure that all third parties that you interact with is fully aware of how you as a business will inform them of a bank account change. Also communicate with all your third parties if you have a change in your personnel. Increase this user cybersecurity awareness training. Users need to understand that they have a role to play in your business to keep security high. I think if they understand what is at risk, then they will be likely to be more cautious. Some story.
Yeah, and I remember the point in time. I remember your involvement and the involvement of the guys downstairs, and it all was at the sort of all hands to the pump. But I suppose if I asked you to summarize, because you were as close to it as Fergus was at that point in time, what would your take on it be?
I think the way Maine handled it was pretty good, you know, and of course they were blessed to get the money back. But I think Fergus, and it was again, it's reiterating Fergus' point, it's about third parties. So you can have all the security internal, but you're still relying on those people that interact with your business for their security to be a certain level. So I think that's a biggie to take out of today. You know, we can all talk about the multi-factors authentication and the passwords and that, but this is almost on the side that you need to be doing as well, is your third parties interaction and making sure that they know how you operate as a business and you know how they operate as a business, and nobody is making, you know, false payments to criminal banks.
Yeah. And I know we instigated a webinar very quickly after that.
Yeah.
We got a lot of our customers on, and it's simple things, even like writing out dear customers to say we will never change our bank account details by this way.
Yeah.
And working through. It's the human stuff, it's the simple stuff that we need the insurers covered of.
Yeah, and if you are changing your personnel, get it out there in an email, and so that the people know that there's a new person coming in. But that still doesn't take away. Also ring us if there's anything suspicious happening. You know, maybe don't ring the number and the name on the email that sent you. Always ring the number that you have for that particular business. I think that's key here.
Yeah.
You know, this other business was trying to do their best and followed it to a certain level. Unfortunately, got called out. So yeah, I think one thing to take away from today is make sure you ring your contact, you know, and that sort of nails things, you know, before they even start. Like you can see there with Maine, 2 days later, that same company was about to make £600,000. The chances of them getting that back probably would have been a lot more slimmer. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra, and Fergus, and whenever you hear this, thank you very much. And again, I really do appreciate you sharing that, because there was a lot there to come out, and there was a lot they asked Fergus to go back over that again. So thank you both. So there has been quite a little bit there we've talked about. What we're going to do now is we're going to share a 4-minute video with you. That'll give us time to get Sam into the room, and that will help position what Sam's going to talk to us about now in the next session. So if we could just roll the video, please.
A breach to hide what they're really after. Confidential information hidden in the depths of the system.
Still here?
No, the computer's crashed.
Join the club. See you Monday.
It's okay for some. Right now, the chances are someone, somewhere, is attacking you. And you don't even know it.
Okay, chaps. We're in.
I bet you're wondering how they got this far.
Give us a smile. Lovely. She's in.
sensitive passwords and system details from a keystroke logger hidden under a desk for 6 months.
You got it?
Easy.
These guys, they know it all. Except, a few weeks earlier, a Probas were hit by a smaller breach. It made the board stop and think how vulnerable they were. So they brought in the experts. It's never just an IT issue. They carried out cybersecurity training from boardroom to basement, identifying what was critical to the business. Threat and intelligence monitoring. They planned a cyber incident response and brought in their own ethical hackers to test the systems and make honeypots to trap the attackers. They reviewed the whole business from New York to Tokyo and devised a game plan for any breach.
Make some noise. We're in.
It's a denial of service attack. We're just monitoring the situation.
Have they got into any accounts?
Very clever. Someone else bangs on the windows, or you hide in the cellar.
They're on to us.
I'll try blocking them.
Is it working?
I don't know.
Well, I need to know, Gil. Is it working?
Lena, launch a worm. These guys are good. They're really good. They're blocking us.
Try again.
They're blocking us!
Try again!
Straight to me. Gotcha. Good, but not good enough.
You're okay. Traffic's blocked.
You can win, but there's always a next time.
Who's next?
Kuribashi Tech.
Criminals just get smarter,
Who have we got for the smoke screen?
Take your pick.
and they're everywhere. A breach will happen, and when it does, will you be ready?
Great, and hopefully that video sort of set the scene of the links that some people go to. We were having a bit of a laugh in there, saying it was very like the Matrix in places, and Sam was commenting on some of the keystrokes that were going on. But I suppose we move on to the second part of the session. Delighted to welcome Sam Kincaid here today, the Cyber Protect Officer with the PSNI, and I think I'll just hand straight over to you, Sam. Thanks, yeah, I think the
Yes. No, thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. Stephen said, my name is Sam Kincaid. I'm with the Cybercrime Centre in Lisky Drive in Belfast. I've been there since the Cybercrime Unit was set up back in 2014. So I was one of the investigators who have been involved in investigating sort of high-end cyber-dependent crime or hacking, as people would know it. And I moved over now as the sort of Cyber Protect Officer for Northern Ireland. So I'm one of the officers based around the regions in the UK who work with the National Cybersecurity Centre and the National Police Chiefs in trying to raise awareness of current threats with local organisations, and that's whether they've been a victim or not. So a lot of my role is working with organisations who want to be proactive and sort of follow the advice that you've heard from Sandra earlier on. And go on to the next slide then. So you can see there, again, as I mentioned, our trusted partners, we're trusted partners for the National Cybersecurity Centre, who are the single point of contact from the government's point of view for advice. That's just a wee snapshot there. You'll see that their advice is written for organisations, no matter what size they are, what sector they are. And it's written according to really the expectation of what your company can do. So when you get down to individuals and sole traders, the advice is written for practical steps that you can undertake. On the next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot really of where we are. This is the cyber security breaches survey. It's carried out every year. It's carried out across different sectors. So a charity can look at what's specific to them, or small or large enterprises. But the same sort of information comes across all of them. And really the interesting thing here from I suppose from a local point and manufacturing point, what we consistently see is, boards, management directors, you can see there, number one, 77% identified cybersecurity as a high priority. And that is a number that's increasing every year. Phishing is the most commonly identified attack there at number 2. And again, that's going to remain the same because employees have access to terminals. How do we contact them? By email, find the attacker. That's the easiest way to make it into your network. But the interesting point for me really is if you look at the difference between point 1 and 3, where directors of companies, owners of companies who are aware of cyber threats, and that's why people are here today. But at the same time, you have only 14% of businesses training their staff on cybersecurity. And that is a gulf, and that's the only way to put it. And that's a gulf that needs to be filled by owners and directors of companies. They need to transfer their awareness at board level into what they actually can do amongst their staff. And carry on. So again, that's what we start off with. I mean, your best asset is actually the staff. Anybody that tells you that there's a weak point in the network, the system really is not getting the message across. And if you make staff feel that way, then you are actually opening yourself up for more exploitation. So staff training is essential. As you see there, it's an essential step in creating the culture that's needed to get people to buy into what you want them to do. You want them to make longer passwords, you need to get that buy-in, or they'll try and circumvent whatever advice you get across. Phishing targets staff. So you've got to make staff aware of what to look for, what's the current trends, what do they do if something happens and they click on it. If they're afraid of reporting it, you're behind in the times. It'll be a week before you find out about it. If they report that and it's an hour, you can take action, or your provider can take action. And that's again, you can see there the NCSC, the bottom left is the image. The National Cybersecurity Centre have a free staff training package that organisations can point staff towards, or you can download it for free and integrate it into your own training packages. And that covers off the basics around phishing and passwords, trying to increase the levels of awareness. And then next slide, please. And that's just again, suppose local context. These are just wee newspaper headlines captured over the last couple of months to show that it's not, as you'd sort of see from the headlines, it's not always in New York, or it's not always in the city of London. These attacks are happening locally. You'll see there's a reasonable theme, in the education sector is being hit, councils, TransLink. These are big public sector enterprises who have a large public face and where attacks become known, and they are in the media. But from our point of view, certainly, I deal with organisations in the manufacturing sector quite regularly that don't make the newspaper headlines. That doesn't mean that they haven't been impacted by these sort of attacks. Just next slide, please. So if we're talking to organisations, and this is one of the things that surprises them quite often, we can go in. We're not going to go in with, you need to buy a big shiny box and put it in the corner and this will solve your problems. The main thing you need to do is get the basics right. And this is where owners and directors of companies, managers have an important role to play. Look at the basics. So the majority of what we see is preventable by taking simple steps to secure cybersecurity. Separate passwords for email is the big one, depending on how you're set up. But if you're using single sign-on and you've got a password, that password should not be used with any other account. Use stronger passwords. I mean, if you're National Cybersecurity Centre, one of the points they'll come up will be the likes of 3 random words or passphrases. But they've got to be unique. You can't use something that incorporates the name of the company, your location, your pet names, anything I can find on Facebook, or anything I would know if I'm your neighbour, your partner, or somebody you've known from school. Turn on 2FA, two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. These first two are the points that organisations do within a very short period of time of being attacked. The first thing that they will implement is we need to make stronger passwords, and why have we not got multi-factor authentication in place? And you were talking to Sandra earlier on, the thing that says, well, why are we doing it now? Why don't we do it before the attack? Because these are free tools. A lot of people have them on their phones for their personal life, and your company is exposed and you don't have it. Again, backup Sandra talked about. We still see the odd organisation that don't have sufficient backups. The key things are ask the questions. What are we backing up? Is it the information that would get our organisation back up and running? How long will that take? Because some organisations really are surprised when they find out that backup doesn't go click and we're back up and running. It's 4 or 5 days, it's 2 weeks. It can be longer to actually get the systems fully integrated back in again. And it's not a backup if it's not been tested. And that's what you need to do. You need to test your backup. And then finally, just updating your devices. One of the easiest ways to get in for an attacker is an automated attack against vulnerable devices. People have seen recently in the news, you have the likes of the Microsoft Exchange, the server vulnerability. The attackers knew about that before Microsoft put the patch out, and they were going for it. Identifying using free tools that anybody can look up online, companies that were exposed to it. Certainly something we've seen last 4 or 5 weeks. We've seen a number of organisations here in Northern Ireland hit with ransomware through an unsecure device. The next slide, please. So again, a couple of just crime types to talk about that are sort of prevalent at the minute. Ransomware, a lot of people will know the information with the health sector down south. Attacks increasingly the result of network intrusion that have occurred weeks earlier, and that's the main thing to get across. If you get this dreaded red splash screen or something telling you you've been encrypted, and you can see that happened at 1 o'clock yesterday morning, with the modern variants that we're seeing, these people have been in for 3 or 4 weeks beforehand. This is actually only to let you know that they've done what they need to do. So they will have taken your data. If there's payment information there, they will harvest that. They will have compromised your passwords, your admin accounts. They will try to build in resilience so that they can get back in. So if you back up your system to the weekend or 2 days before, you've actually backed up to the situation where they were already in your account. So they have been in, and really encryption, some of them are now talking about not even bothering to encrypt because the money comes from the risk of the organization. Estimated costs, again, if you are suffering a ransomware attack and you report it and you haven't paid, that figure is 0. So Stephen was talking earlier on about loss figures. You haven't paid anything. But when we talk to organizations, one manufacturing organization we're certainly going to spoke to, their starting point was this will cost us a minimum £100,000. That's in lost revenue. That's in bringing in outside experts to ensure their network is now secure and then get back up and running. And then at that point, people kick in with, right, we need to introduce a password policy. We need to do staff training. And those costs that could have been spread out over a period of time before an attack become an urgent necessity. How are they getting in? Phishing, compromised passwords, lack of two-factor authentication. So we're going back to the basics. They're exploiting what they know. Next page, sir. And again, I'm not going to read this, but it's just, we sort of looked at the mitigation advice that's out there from the National Cybersecurity Centre or the FBI. When you look at what they're asking organizations to do to avoid an attack, it's again back to the thing we talk about, patching devices so that they can't get in through a known vulnerability. Multi-factor authentication, so they can't get in just because they've got your password. Antivirus works. We've seen it work with organizations on terminals where it was present, that it was up to date and it stopped the encryption. But again, big thing, training. Train your staff to mitigate the risk of phishing. Test your backups. Again, no point testing your backup after an incident, because that's probably when you'll find all the faults and the errors. That's what then puts you offline. Next slide, please. And the second one, Sandra has dealt with there, talking about the main experience. So for ourselves, this is still one of the risks we'll see. Where we've seen changes over the years, phishing emails are still there. It's free, costs nobody anything to do them. The successful attacks, the phishing email will come from your customer, your client, your supplier, who's already been compromised. It won't necessarily, but very rarely does it bring malware into your system. It will be a PDF with a link embedded into it, or it's an email. So that will arrive in your inbox because you know them. It probably has a subject line that you sent that person initially, so you might recognize that. The system will not detect malware because there isn't any present, and it will bring you to what is a clean website. And in fact, it's been potentially set up recently in the last hour or so, or it's been compromised and they've put on the screen at the end. Anyway, what you'll end up with is the screen on the right there, which is a login page, asking you to enter your password. So again, as Sandra had mentioned, I mean, that for us is the main thing. If it enters your password, that's where you have to start considering, do I need to do this, or do you ask questions? Just the next slide, please. Again, it's just an example of what they'll do. If they're in your account, they'll review your account for signs of payment. So can I monetize this very quickly because you make payments or you receive them? If that's the case, I'll put mail rules in place to isolate you from your client or supplier, and then introduce a new bank account. If I can't get that, well, then I'll go into your account and you become the hopping point then for the next people, because I'm going to attack everybody in your inbox with an email from you asking them to click and put their password in. And if something happens, they'll remember, oh, well, actually, it was Sam there that sent that email. So a bit at the end of the red really is where you start taking practical steps. So Sandra mentioned, if you're introducing your bank account details, have a system in place that prevents that from kicking in. I was talking to Sandra and Stephen earlier on, and a few years ago, three years ago, we did an event together where there was an organisation from Ulster came forward and said their experience. They had set up a one-page document that people had to fill out for new bank accounts, and that was just to reinforce the system. Yes, I've got the email. I have contacted this person on a telephone number that we already have and we've verified. So a mobile number, really no. You're looking for a Northern Ireland landline from an invoice or an email from 3 months ago or last month. It's been settled and there's been no problems. And again, teach your staff. If somebody sends you an email with a document and you open it and you're asked for your password, don't put it in. Because if I send you an encrypted, secure, confidential, whatever way I want to word it, document to open, why would I have used your password to encrypt it and secure it? And it's getting people into that because their mindset is using a password for something that's secure or confidential. That makes sense to me. People forget, why am I putting mine in? That's the next slide then. So just quickly to cover off, these are some of the tools that we will promote to organisations to try and increase awareness. So the first one, Police Cyber Alarm, is one that's being launched by the National Police Chiefs Council. The actual tool itself is one that's by Pervade Software, who are also involved with the Cyber Essentials side of things. So this is a free tool that organisations can sign up to that will monitor traffic coming into your firewall. It'll also provide a free vulnerability tool that will look at any websites you provide or IP addresses that you provide, and give you a weekly or monthly report. From a policing point of view, we look at it, like you said, a CCTV camera. This is not looking for who has broken into your system. This is looking at who's actually knocking at the door at 3 o'clock every day. Why am I getting these requests to log into my system from China, Russia, Senegal, or England, or Northern Ireland? Again, from our point of view, what it does is it gives us feedback on what's being seen locally. So the more organisations that join it, the better picture we get as to what's actually being seen in Northern Ireland, how do we go and advise businesses, the steps that they can take. Next slide, please. You have two here from the National Cyber Security Centre. Again, Cyber Essentials, the government-backed scheme to promote cybersecurity. Brilliant tool. I had a training day with IASME, who run it on behalf of the NCSC last week. Again, if you look at what it looks at, firewalls, device security, stopping malware on your system updates. The vast majority, people are reluctant to put in numbers and probably quite right, but the vast majority of attacks can be prevented by implementing the Cyber Essentials scheme. If you go to the Information Commissioner's website, you'll see organisations should have a basic framework in place around cybersecurity, and they'll reference the likes of the NCSC's tool. It's a recognised accreditation you can go through. You can get a badge on your website, and it shows that you're taking steps to protect your information. And then last 2 weeks ago, they introduced a new readiness tool. It's a free tool. You can go do some questions to see, well, how am I set up? Do I need more assistance from my IT to get through this? And it gives you an action plan. So we suggest you look at the following. And the second one there, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Partnership. This again is a joint industry government initiative. It's a website that's membership is through sponsorship. So I'm one of the local sponsors for Northern Ireland, where it allows organisations to share information in a confidential way. You can share it anonymously. You can say, this has happened to me. The traffic light protocol means nobody will know who you are, but you can provide that information. But they also provide things like indicators of compromise that are coming from sources that are not publicly known, and that allows organisations to upload stuff onto their system and otherwise we can get. Again, next slide. And the last two, Sam and I are having a laugh on about have I been phoned. This is a free tool that the National Cyber Security Centre and ourselves will use when we're talking to organisations or individuals who have been hacked. It gives you an insight into how your email domain looks. As an organisation, there you can see the top of the bar, domain search, you can search your company's email domain if you can verify you own it. That will give you a return of every email address in your system that's been linked to a known data breach and the sort of information that's lost. From our point of view, if I was coming out to you as an organization, I would ask you to do this, encourage you to do this, and then look at the sort of breaches that are linked to your company. So we talk about the MyFitnessPal, we talk about clothing companies, social media companies, and ask yourself, are you happy that employees use your company email address for that? If your policy up that it has to be used for work related, you straight away reduce the attack vector for somebody, the opportunity, the possibility of them getting a password that will get them into your system. And again, free notify service, tick the wee box, click that, not a robot, but you're all armed, and they'll tell you in 3 months' time if one of your email addresses is linked. And then the final one that we've taken on now, we have a physical version of this tabletop exercise, and we've got a virtual version now from our partners, the City London Protect team. Decisions and disruptions, which is an introduction to cybersecurity, really for office managers. So we'll look to run this for an hour and 15 with teams of maybe 6 or 8 people, but we want that mixture. So we want somebody from IT, from HR, who looks after the physical premises, get somebody, a decision maker from the board, who's in charge of finance, get somebody who represents IT certainly. And we run through a tabletop exercise here, through virtually, or we can do it on site, which will go through certain scenarios and say, well, how would you go? How would you respond? What do you want to buy to protect your system? And get that emphasis building that this is not an IT issue simply. If staff aren't aware of this, information could be lost. You have physical damage. If I can break into your computer system, the example you saw earlier in the video, I can put a keylogger in. I can do more damage through that than actually trying to hack into your system. Certainly it's one tool we're keen to roll out. Again, myself being one involved in it through the Cyber Protect email address. As things change and people start to have more meetings, we'll do it on conference tables. It does, as the figure on the left suggests, it does involve Lego, which actually it's gone through a couple of universities developed it, and this is actually what's actually hands-on and engaging with people. That's it. It's the last slide there, just has contact email address. Again, Cyber Protect, psi.police.uk, that comes through myself. If anyone has any questions in relation to any of those documents, certainly we can send out hard copies, or we can talk to you on a one-to-one basis.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Sam. I think it's great, or not great, but whenever you look at how basic a lot of this stuff can be, and how much of it is in your own hands, like upgrading machines. Just because a Windows 7 machine is still sitting in the corner perfectly functioning, doesn't mean it's not a risk.
Yeah, one of the things that we didn't have there, one of the first things and I'm sure this is something that they outsource to, is you have to audit your system. There's still people being attacked because of admin accounts on a website. The person moved on, they don't know it's there, or CCTV system is running off an old terminal desktop that's sitting in the attic, and it works, and it hasn't broken, it works. So why would we worry about it? And nobody knows the accounts that are on it. They said, well, it's a vulnerable device. Maybe it was set up with client 123 as password, or it's my CCTV or something. And that's again the vulnerability thing. So it is one of those things you say, if you know what you're protecting, that's the first thing.
Yes.
And then start going, right, well, our aim when we talk to organizations is to take them from here to here. One of the phrases that we used to hear was, perfect's the enemy of better. And if you go into this with the idea of being perfect, you're going to get compromised and you're disheartened with nothing else. The idea is if you can increase your level slightly, you actually dramatically decrease the chance of somebody getting in.
Perfect. Okay, if I could just jump maybe first to Stephen's question. I think I got it captured there, Stephen, whenever you posted it. Your question was around, if you do suspect rogue behaviour, who should you call? What should the first actions be?
From a law enforcement point of view, you have a number of options, really. I mean, from our point of view, if it was, whether this is a malicious insider, an employee, or an outside attacker, you can ring 101, it's non-emergency, 101 through to the police and say you want to report it. It will, depending on policing perspectives, end up in different teams. So we might support an investigation if money's been lost, because that's fraud, and our fraud specialists are the ones that are dealing with the banking side of it, and they lead on that, or we'll certainly support it. Alternatively, you can report it through Action Fraud. one of the good features about Action Fraud is they have a 24/7 reporting system for businesses, which will put you in touch with somebody who can provide you your initial advice if it's out of hours. They will then refer that through a system that can go to the National Crime Agency or ourselves as the Regional Cybercrime Team to try and engage with businesses or organisations. There's also the third alternative, which is the National Cybersecurity Centre. If it's something you identify as a hacking, a cyber-dependent incident, somebody's breached your network, you can actually use a report system through them. They are not law enforcement, and they will ask you, is this for guidance or you don't want us to pass the law through law enforcement? But there is that option as well. Certainly ourselves, through 101, reporting it. If it needs cybercrime assistance, that's what we'll do.
Okay, thank you. Conor, maybe if I can hand back to you, I just don't have visibility of the questions at the minute here. So
yeah, one that's come in. If there has been a breach and if people have been watching your business, how can you know? And how can you know if you had a brush like that?
I mean, if they're, it's very hard. I mean, if they're actually in, it's having the right logging in place and auditing in place through your in-house or your third-party IT support. I mean, again, when they're somebody setting up a system, they'll be looking for a baseline. What's normal activity? So they'll want to identify, well, these people are probably going to come in out of office hours when they think they're less likely to be detected, less likely to have a flash, like you can't open that file because somebody's opened it, and you already have it open. How have I got that open? So they'll come in out of office hours. So those systems will kick in place. There are things, you'll get times where you will things like you can't open files, because they're being used. But it really is having the right infrastructure in place beforehand. From our point of view, we work for awareness. Our main thing is trying to stop them getting in.
Yeah.
I think it's too late, isn't it? Almost when you know there's been a breach.
Yeah, you'll get.
It's too late.
You'll get the big thing is, again, obviously with the video, and we're talking about stuff. We're talking about ransomware, outside attackers. Former ex-employees, malicious people who get access to your credentials, they're still around and will still be logging in. So again, it is, Sandra said, we look at good housekeeping. So offboarding staff, you will get cases where the account's just left there. So, well, if they've used a weak password, somebody else will jump on that. So it's having those systems in place and saying, well, what can I do? I can reduce the opportunity for somebody to get in. And then if somebody does get in, you want to be talking to your IT providers, make sure you have the right infrastructure to say, well, what could we detect? And all within what's reasonable for your organization. It's the big thing as well. Your business on what can you fund, what can you spend, and what's reasonable for you to do.
Well, that's a good thing, just in terms of what is an appropriate amount to spend, really, from a security point of view. Yeah,
well, one of the things I've done a course recently. The big line was, you implement just enough security and not too much. So you have to, if you're not, and I've dealt with organizations who quite rightly, their core focus is they organize the factories, manufacturing, that's what they're specialized in. The IT that provides that ability is something that they in-house or outsource to somebody else, but be aware of what the current risks are. So as we said, the risks are around passwords, two-factor authentication not updating. If you have a system in place that helps to secure that, you are reducing the risk dramatically for free. And then, depending on what sort of information you're holding, if you're holding sensitive PII information, you'll be under a different type of regulatory authorities. So you need to be protecting that and taking steps to do that. A lot of that will be given to you. If you're going through ISO accreditation, you'll have to meet certain thresholds. But certainly, our thing is look at the basics, and once you hit those basics, you are reducing the risk, and you're not preventing an attack. Again, go back to what we said both times. You're not preventing a burglary. What you're doing is just uploading your premises that's broken into, and that's why you have the alarm system. That's why you have the CCTV and the keys. So think about it that in your own system. I need to secure my system as well as I would the physical structure, and that will make somebody walk up and past.
That's great, Sandra. Just going back to the sort of example you were given earlier on, what were the steps? The first thing that they did once they realized they had an attack, and what would you recommend people do?
So the first things that they had done, obviously they rang the bank. There's a couple of things obviously happening at the same time. So they were ringing the bank and they were ringing the customers to stop it from progressing even further with other customers. But at the same time, they had rang ourselves, which then we could sort of log on and run some reporting and see where the brute force attacks was happening, trying to, crack passwords, trying to get passwords. Ultimately, the first thing we done was change passwords and isolate systems as much as we could. And then you go and you start to investigate what has actually happened when you have that particular site and PC securely remotely off the network so that it can't actually do any further infections. So that was the first thing we done there. And then we continued on our analysis and tried to build up a picture, but that came afterwards. We just wanted to make sure that everything was as secure as it possibly could be with antivirus. You're running them extra scans, running those extra vulnerability scans as well, just to see was there any other holes on the perimeter of their network that anybody could get in. So we were just trying to nail it down and trying to focus it down to where the actual areas of problem were.
Great. Okay. Well, look, we're coming up on our hour now, and I'm conscious about keeping people a wee bit more. But I would just like folks, if you could run down maybe sort of the top 3 tips you could give to people if you want to think about that. I'll put you on the spot first, Stephen. I'll give the other 2 a chance to think about that quickly.
Well, we'll give one each. I'll give one there, and we'll work around. To me, I'm going to go back to the point that Sam made, and it's about unsupported devices. And again, I fully appreciate that there's budget associated with this, and people have to upgrade machines, etc. But if there's something sitting in the corner there, just because it looks as if it's fine and it looks as if it's working, that could be the biggest threat to your business. So whoever your IT provider is, if they're making recommendations to you to upgrade to a Windows 10 machine or to the latest server, etc., listen to them and act on it. So that's my one.
You go next.
I probably go with passwords, but maybe you're going to say the same. No. Passwords, because I think it sort of links in with user awareness. So if you can make your users aware of the importance of how the password is made up, and it's not just made up and give around to people, it should be sacred. It should be just for you. I think that would be my biggest thing to get out of it, and have a certain length, have certain characters, all that normal, but have it sacred to yourself and stop sharing it.
Yeah, I'm really mindful of feeds off, Sandra. I mean, really looking at account security. If somebody said to me, what's the single best step I can take today, this afternoon? 2-factor authentication. Phishing engineering, I will either guess your password if I'm allowed to force it. I can engineer you into giving it to me through research or through an email, through a phone call. 2-factor authentication dramatically reduces the opportunity of me getting into your account. And linked to that, again, look at your admin accounts. You can minimize the damage if I get in by whatever reason by looking at who's got admin privileges. Do they need them? Do they have too much power? And if you have somebody who's the go-to person who sets up accounts for you, have they got 2 accounts is the other thing? Because if they're checking their email on their admin account and they get phished, I get their admin credentials if I can get in, using malware. If I can hack their account, again, I get their credentials. So give them a second account, tell them, log in the admin if you need to do an admin duty. Apart from that, your normal duty, your single account.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, folks, they're all sage things to be looking at and simple steps people can take. I just want to thank you. Stephen's had a drop off here. He's having dodgy internet connections. So from our end, I'd just love to thank you for giving those really pertinent information, really important stuff that people can action as well. And we will be sharing the recording with people and the presentations if that's okay as well. And hopefully we'll be able to cover these topics again down the line. I'd like to thank you for your time today. And I hope it's really useful for people as well. So with that, we'll wrap this up, and the recording will be shared later on.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Connor.
All right, see you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.